I've got a problem with poetry blurbs. By blurbs, I don't mean the whole text at the back of a poetry book. I think that introductions and bios are interesting and mostly necessary in a poetry book. For the purposes of this article, the word blurb refers to something more specific. That single line on the front or back cover of the book quoting a sentence of somebody else's opinion. Okay, look, let's take some random titles from my poetry bookshelf and read the blurbs on them. The Nerds, A Night in Brooklyn. According to Richard Hoffman, it's the finest book yet of one of our finest poets. Well, not a cliche at all, this sentence. I immediately feel like I can take it at face value. Number 2. The Sugar Mile by Glenn Maxwell, of which PN Review says, Glenn Maxwell's writing is resplendent. ... He is one of the finest poets currently at work. Oh, it's another one of our finest poets. What a coincidence. Let's keep going. Number 3. My Copy of the Horse. Number 3. Here's someone I know quite well. John Stone, The School of Forgery. And Marcia Mentor from Sphinx says, Stone is well-read, keen of ear, and a very, very fine technician. But what wins me over is his divine crankiness. His divine crankiness? What the fuck is that? The next, Riddance by Anthony Wilson, of which Peter Sampson says, this is a remarkable book. Modest but ambitious, unguarded but... Modest but ambitious. Modest but ambitious? Are you fucking kidding me? How can a poetry book be modest but ambitious? Seriously, blurbs are a stupid idea in the first place. If someone is buying a poetry book, you would assume that that person is smart enough not to do so because William Shakespeare's descendant living in Tacuarembó said that he liked it. But if you have to have blurbs, then at least have them make sense. Whenever I read a blurb on a poetry book nowadays, it's either incredibly dull and hollow praise that adds nothing to my experience of the book, like this is one of the finest books by one of the finest poets with one of the finest cars and one of the finest phones, who gives a shit? Or else it's like people are competing at who can find the most meaningless words to describe a poetry collection. I mean, I've taken the mickey out of Luke Kennard in the Trevian review before, so I don't want it to look like I've got something against this guy, you know? But this guy has made it a specialty out of writing senseless blurbs. This is what he says about John Clegg's Antler. Beautifully crafted and utterly contemporary. His work makes me feel the way I felt when I first read The New York School, or tasted pistachio flavor ice cream, or the house lights dimmed. Oh, I see. Because of course I know exactly what this guy felt like the first time that he tried pistachio flavored ice cream. What kind of a maniac do you have to be anyway to remember the first time that you tried specific flavors of ice cream? I mean, maybe I could empathize if he said the first time that he tried Marmite, even though I can't imagine how that would make for a good poetry blurb. Good one, Ben. What the hell happened to you, Luke? You grew up in the streets of Calcutta, eating nothing but bowls of rice until some benefactor out of a novel by Charles Dickens came and gave you your first ice cream ever? You wanna know my guess, Luke? That ice cream was spiked. Or perhaps that green stuff wasn't pistachio at all.
Go to the next one, go to the next one, go to the next one.
I was gonna write a good blurb until I got high.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna be completely absurd, but then I got high.
Yeah.
Now I'm raving like Charles Baudelaire, and I know why.
Why, man?
Yeah, because I got high. Because I got high. Because I got high. When we grow up with some things, we assume that they are normal. Blurbs are a commercial stratagem that is really prevalent in more money-driven media like films and music and musicals especially. I've never seen a poster for a musical without 23 different people saying that it's the best thing in the last 300 years. But everybody knows they're bullshit. If we lived in a world where Blurbs gave a fair assessment of the work, things would look very different. So, given that poetry is not supposed to be about the money, but about saying the truth in language, don't you think it's kind of tasteless to have a commercial trick slapped on the front cover? I think that the original cover of, say, Ulysses would look prettier today if it had some nobody's line printed on it. Doesn't that suggest that blurbs are really not a pretty thing? The point I'm trying to make is that even though we may be used to seeing them as normal, blurbs are not necessary. They are not really used in other countries in Europe, and there are several publishers here which do not use them. Friggin' Faber, for instance, published Sam Riviere's Austerities book with no blurbs, either inside or outside. So next time that a publisher asks for your permission to use something that you said as a blurb for someone else's book, mate, just say no. I know it must be really flattering when a publisher tells you that everybody gives a fuck about your opinion, but that doesn't give you the right to force that opinion down my throat every time that I look on a book's cover, especially when that book is not yours. Good one, Ben. Yeah.
D'Amsterdam, il y a des marins qui naissent dans la chaleur épaisse des longueurs océanes dans le port d'un